March 1st, 1943. 02:17 a.m. Western approaches headquarters, Derby House, Liverpool. Rain lashes against the blackout curtains while a single lamp burns over a chalk-scarred linoleum floor. 19-year-old Janet Patricia Oakl blinks away exhaustion as she leans over the giant tactical grid spread across the room. Her fingertips are stained white from hours of chalk work, marking convoy lanes, U-boat contact lines, and the delicate arcs of Aztec sweeps. Outside the basement walls, the Luftwaffe's last raid on Liverpool had ended weeks earlier, but the air still smells faintly of soot and wet brick. When the pipes rumble, it sounds disturbingly like distant depth charges. Inside the Western Approaches Tactical Unit, WW2, the strangest, quietest, and most brilliant war room in Britain. The night is just beginning. A Royal Navy lieutenant, sleeves rolled up, calls out, "Contact bearing 312, convoy SC-121, starboard column." Janet kneels, chalk in hand, and draws the thin white line of a U-boat's predicted course. A German Type 7C, stalking in moonless Atlantic dark. She doesn't look up when she speaks. "Sir, if the escorts keep chasing single contacts, they'll leave a gap in the screen. The Wolfpack will exploit it." Commander Ainsworth, stoic and practical, folds his arms as he stands behind her. "Miss Oakl, we've been over this. Aggressive prosecution deters the attack." Janet forces herself to stay polite. "With respect, sir, aggressive prosecution is creating the attack." The room goes quiet. No one here forgets what happened to her own brother's destroyer, HMS Vimy, lost with most hands during convoy SC-121's nightmare week in the North Atlantic. Janet doesn't mention him. She never does. But the officers know, and some resent that a teenager, a civilian girl no less, armed only with chalk and mathematics, keeps challenging the Atlantic Fleet's long-standing doctrine. Ainsworth gestures to the board. "Very well. Run it again." Janet nods to the enemy team, 4 Wrens and 2 officers playing the roles of German Wolfpack commanders. She cracks a faint smile. "Ready, ladies?" They nod back. They love this. They're good at this. The Royal Navy men, secretly humiliated at repeatedly losing to women in simulation games, shift uncomfortably. WW2 is an odd place. A room where patterns, probabilities, and women with chalk can sink ships, at least on the floor. The simulation begins. Janet marks the convoy center with a circle, 35 merchantmen arranged in disciplined columns. She assigns HMS Snowflake and her escorts to their standard aggressive stance. Any U-boat detection triggers a chase of at least 10 miles, standard doctrine issued by senior Admiralty staff. It takes 12 minutes for the disaster to unfold. A chalk-marked U-boat closes from the northeast. Aztec pings. A British destroyer peels off to investigate. The screen weakens. Another Aztec contact. Another escort peels off. Janet's voice is steady. Gap forming in the starboard screen. Commander Ainsworth sighs. "Convoy won't notice. Escorts will pin them down." Janet gives the Wolfpack team a subtle signal. A second U-boat dives beneath the untouched gap. The Wrens move quickly, chalking torpedo tracks. The room holds its breath. Then, clack! A stick hits the floor. A Wren marks 2 torpedo impacts on a merchant vessel. Then a third. Then a fourth. A destroyer tries to return from its chase pattern, but arrives too late. Commander Ainsworth rubs his temples. "We've lost half the column." Janet kneels again, adjusting her glasses, tracing the geometry. "Sir, with respect, we've killed the convoy again." She says "we," but everyone knows it was her. The Royal Navy officers stare at the floor, ashamed. For 3 consecutive nights, the same result. Convoy destroyed by tactics their admirals insist are sound. Every time the escorts leave formation to chase, the Wolfpack penetrates the gap. Janet circles the breach. This, right here, is how my brother's ship died. They followed doctrine instead of mathematics. Silence. Even the officers who resent her brilliance avoid her eyes. Commander Ainsworth exhales slowly. All right, Miss Oakl. Prepare the briefing. Admiral Horton will attend in 2 hours. A heartbeat of disbelief ripples through the room. Admiral Sir Max Horton, Commander-in-Chief, Western Approaches, the man who controls every convoy in the North Atlantic. Janet's pulse spikes. She wipes chalk dust onto her skirt, then realizes it doesn't help. Ainsworth looks at her the way a field commander might gaze at a young soldier before the biggest battle of their life. Miss Oakl, he says quietly. If you're wrong, he'll shut this unit down. Janet lifts her chin. And if I'm right, sir, we stop losing 8 ships a week. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Ainsworth nods. Very well. Run the scenario again. Horton will want to see blood. Janet steps back onto the chalk-marked battlefield, heart pounding. Reset positions, she says. Her voice no longer trembles. Tonight, a girl with chalk intends to change the course of the Battle of the Atlantic. March 1st, 1943, 04:06 a.m. Derby House, Liverpool. The air tastes of coal dust, damp wool, and tension. Footsteps echo down the concrete staircase long before the door opens. The officers in the Western Approaches tactical unit fall stiffly to attention. Janet stands among them, palms chalk dry, heart pounding in her throat. The door swings wide. Admiral Sir Max Horton steps inside. Broad-shouldered despite age, uniform immaculate, eyes sharp enough to flense steel. He was known in the submarine service as the Terror of the Baltic. He'd hunted U-boats before most of the officers here learned to shave. He does not waste time on greetings. Commander Ainsworth, Horton growls, I am told your team has discovered a flaw in my convoy doctrine. That had better be true, or I'm about to lose a great deal of sleep for nothing. Janet inhales through her nose, trying to look composed. Horton's gaze shifts to her. Brief, cutting, assessing. A 19-year-old girl with chalk dust on her skirt does not look like a threat to Germany's Wolfpacks. Miss Oakl, Ainsworth says, will run the demonstration. Horton raises a brow. She? Janet steps forward before Ainsworth can speak again. Yes, sir. The Admiral studies her for one uncomfortably long moment, then nods curtly. Proceed. The room exhales. Janet kneels at the floor grid, her hand trembling only slightly as she redraws the convoy formation. 35 merchant ships in columns of 5. HMS Snowflake, HMS Vimy, HMS Dianthus, and a handful of corvettes forming the escort screen. Behind her, Horton watches like a hawk. Behind him, the room feels like a courtroom. Janet marks the German Wolfpack. 5 Type Sevillacs positioned in a crescent. Group Driller. A historically accurate formation known to attack at night. She explains, voice steady. The escorts are trained to chase contacts aggressively, but the Wolfpacks exploit that. Once an escort leaves formation, the screen opens. Horton narrows his eyes. Show me. Janet nods to the Wren officers, the enemy team. The women straighten, excited and nervous. They respect the Admiral, but they also know something he doesn't. They can sink his convoy with chalk. The first U-boat approaches. Janet marks the Azdic sweep. Destroyer Snowflake detaches to investigate the contact. She narrates. A Wren grins. Thank you kindly. she says softly, and moves her U-boat figure toward the newly opened gap. Another contact appears. Another destroyer leaves the screen. Admiral Horton lifts his chin. He sees it, but he does not speak. Janet circles the breach. Sir, at this moment, Convoy SC-1 suffered heavy losses. Our escorts were chasing single U-boats while the Wolfpack penetrated the unguarded lane. The Wren commander calls out. 3 torpedoes fired. Another officer draws the devastating chalk lines. Clack, 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 impact, impact, impact. 3 merchantmen go down. Water and fire and chalk form on the linoleum. A corvette tries to return from its chase, but is now 10 miles off and blind in the dark. Janet marks 2 more torpedo hits on a tanker. Horton's jaw tightens. He leans closer, not in anger, but calculation. This is a man who has commanded submarines. He knows a kill pattern when he sees one. Janet speaks quietly. Sir, this is how my brother's ship died, following doctrine that no longer works. The chalk stops moving. Silence presses in. A Wren whispers to herself, not realizing the Admiral hears. Convoy's done for. Horton turns slowly toward Janet. Run it again, he orders. The officers reset the pieces. Janet redraws every line. Horton kneels beside her, an old submariner examining his new battlefield. Miss Oakl, he says, I want you to use every tactic the Germans have used in the last 6 months. Assume nothing. Hurt me. Janet nods. Yes, sir. The Wolfpack closes. Escorts peel off. Gaps form. Horton's expression doesn't change, not even as the Wrens deliver the finishing blow, another convoy slaughtered with mathematical precision. He stands. Again. The room resets. They sink him a 3rd time. Again. A 4th. Horton's voice stays level, but a storm brews behind his eyes. The Wrens sink the convoy a 5th time, refining U-boat patterns with eerie ease. Every time the escorts leave formation, the result is the same. A hole, a penetration, a massacre. At the end of the 5th run, Horton folds his arms. That, he says, is enough. Janet feels the weight of the moment settle over her like cold seawater. This is where her career ends, or her theory is vindicated. The Admiral looks straight at her. Miss Oakl, you have just demonstrated that my own doctrine is killing British sailors. Janet's stomach drops. Horton continues, and therefore, effective immediately. Everyone holds their breath. I am ordering the retraining of every convoy escort commander in the Atlantic. Janet's eyes widen. She almost forgets to breathe. Horton faces the entire room. We will adopt tight defensive screens. We will use raspberry, step-aside, beta search, pineapple, whatever these chalk-slinging geniuses devise. If the mathematics say it works, we do it. He looks back at Janet. Your brother's ship will not have died in vain. No one speaks for several seconds. Then Horton adds, softer, Miss Oakl, well done. For the first time all night, Janet feels her throat tighten. The Admiral turns to his officers. Prepare my car. We begin rewriting the Battle of the Atlantic at dawn. March 3rd, 1943, 22 to 11 p.m. Western approaches, tactical unit, Derby House, Liverpool. The chalkboards glow under dim lamps as rain hammers the Merseyside streets. Janet stands in the center of the floor-grid battlefield, her skirt dusted white, hair pinned back, eyes sharp with a mix of fear and determination. Around her, the Royal Navy escorts assigned to the first retraining class gather in a half-circle. Grizzled corvette skippers, destroyer XOs, convoy officers, and training captains who have spent years fighting U-boats the old way. Some wear skepticism like a medal. Some carry the quiet guilt of ships lost. All of them know change is coming, because Admiral Horton has ordered it personally. Commander Ainsworth steps forward. Gentlemen, tonight we train exactly as the new doctrine demands. Miss Oakl will lead the U-boat simulation. Murmurs ripple through the group. A lieutenant mutters, not quite quietly enough, "A girl? Running convoy tactics?" Another adds, "This should be interesting." Janet hears them, but she doesn't react. She has chalk, she has mathematics, and now she has Horton's backing. That is stronger than any rank in this room. She steps to the floor grid. "Gentlemen," she says, voice calm but carrying, "tonight you will defend convoy ONS 175, and tonight you will survive." A few officers chuckle, but not for long. Janet kneels and chalks the convoy into position. Columns staggered, merchantmen tight, escorts spread evenly around the perimeter. This time, unlike the old doctrine, nothing peels off the screen. No destroyer chases beyond a mile. No corvette races blindly into the dark. Horton's new rules are brutal in their discipline. Enemy Wolfpack approaching from the northwest, Janet announces. 3 boats on the surface, 2 submerged. They will attempt to split your screen. The officers tense. They know this classic German tactic, the Horn formation, designed by Admiral Dönitz himself to break convoy cohesion. Janet pantomimes the German approach. Chalk lines move like ghostly torpedoes. The escorts respond with a newly taught maneuver. Raspberry pattern, a shifting arc of corvettes moving in coordinated sweeps, exchanging ASDIC coverage without leaving gaps, like the folding blades of a fan. The officers move their pieces, following the new choreography. The formation looks awkward at first. Too slow, too rigid. Then Janet unleashes the Wolfpack. 3 U-boats charge the perimeter, diving in unison. The officers brace. Janet chalks the attack, but this time, the raspberry pattern holds. Destroyers overlap their sweeps. Corvettes counter-rotate. ASDIC cones interlock in a deadly net. A wren playing U-boat commander clicks her tongue. Blast, they've boxed me in. Janet draws the inevitable line, clack. U-boat destroyed. A ripple of surprise moves through the officers. "Lucky," the skeptical lieutenant mutters. Janet doesn't argue. She simply resets the board. "Let's try it again. 2 more U-boats, higher speed, better timing." The officers reposition. Janet chalks the new pattern. "Pineapple," she says, "is designed for one purpose. Break up a Wolfpack before it reaches firing position. Imagine your escorts as spikes around the fruit. Move together. Never leave a hole." She signals the wrens. The U-boats surge forward, practicing the historically deadly fencer's lunge tactic. One boat distracts, the others strike the gap. But the escorts execute Pineapple perfectly. Janet marks the results. 1 U-boat forced to dive, 1 loses contact, 1 is disabled. No merchant ships hit, no escorts lost. For the first time, a commander whistles under his breath. Bloody hell, it works. Janet straightens, dusting chalk from her palms. Mathematics doesn't lie, sir. The lieutenant who mocked her earlier shifts uncomfortably. His eyes are on the board, not her. Respect is slowly growing in the room. Janet resets the convoy yet again. But this time, the mood has changed. The officers lean closer. Their eyes track every line she draws. She speaks with quiet authority. Step aside is the maneuver that will save the most lives. It is how escorts defend a convoy against a night attack at close range. A destroyer captain leans in. Why step aside, exactly? Janet draws 2 parallel chalk lines. Because instead of charging toward the torpedo tracks, like the old doctrine, you slide laterally, keeping the screen intact and forcing U-boats to fire at sharper, ineffective angles. A murmur of approval passes through the room. The Wren U-boat commanders grin darkly and begin their run. Janet narrates as the tactical dance unfolds. Wolfpack diving from the west. 300 meters. 2 submerged. Fast approach. Escorts, hold the line. Step aside. Now. The officers execute the sideways maneuver precisely. The U-boat's firing angles go bad instantly. Torpedoes streak, but miss. Another U-boat tries to surface for a night attack. A corvette intercepts, depth charges landing in a tight fan. Clack, confirmed kill. The lieutenant who doubted her earlier shakes his head, impressed despite himself. Miss Oakl, that's damn clever. Janet feels heat rise to her face, but she stays focused. These tactics only work, she warns, if every escort maintains discipline. If one ship breaks formation, the Wolfpack wins. A destroyer captain nods gravely. Then we'll keep the line. No more hero chases. Janet exhales. The first moment of real relief she's felt since Horton's inspection. The officers aren't just learning, they're believing. Commander Ainsworth checks his watch. Gentlemen, that concludes tonight's drills. You've just seen how the new doctrine works when executed correctly. A lieutenant commander steps forward, addressing Janet directly. Miss Oakl, if these tactics were used in the last 6 months, how many ships do you think we would have saved? Janet looks at the chalk lines, white scars on the battlefield that never moves, but represents an ocean that has swallowed tens of thousands. She answers softly, perhaps enough that my brother might still be alive. Silence holds the room. Not pity, not discomfort. Respect. Commander Ainsworth clears his throat. Gentlemen, we begin full-scale Atlantic implementation tomorrow. Dismissed. The officers depart slowly, many stopping to nod at Janet as they leave. When the room is finally empty, she kneels again, fingertips brushing a chalk-drawn merchantman. For the first time in weeks, she feels something like hope. The Atlantic is changing, and a girl with chalk is the one changing it. March 15th, 1943, at 1:42 a.m. North Atlantic, 300 miles southeast of Cape Farewell. Wind force 8, sea state 6, visibility near 0. Convoy HX-229 claws its way through mountainous seas. 38 merchant ships heaving and groaning as they rise and slam into the dark, frozen troughs. Waves smash across decks, ripping tarps free and flooding hatch covers. Frost clings to rigging. The Atlantic is a black, boiling creature tonight, one hungry enough to swallow men whole. But tonight, for the first time in months, the convoy is not sailing blind. They carry the new doctrine, Janet's chalk-born tactics, taught only days ago at Derby House. Aboard HMS Harvester, H-19, Lieutenant Commander Arthur Broad crouches beside the chart table, gripping a pencil with white-knuckled tension. The escort screen moves with choreographed precision. Step-aside drills practiced in Liverpool now unfolding for real on the dark ocean. Sir, the Aztec operator calls. High-speed contact off port bow, 35 yards per second, closing. A fast approach U-boat. Close. Too close. Broad's instincts scream to peel off and charge the contact, as he'd been taught for years. Close the gap, isolate the submarine, chase it into the depths with ash cans and fury. But that doctrine is dead. He hears the voice of a 19-year-old girl in a chalk-filled basement. Do not chase. Step aside. Hold the screen. The Wolfpack is waiting for you to break formation. Broad wipes salt spray from his face. Helmsman, left full rudder. Execute, step aside. The order feels unnatural, counterintuitive, even cowardly, but the ship obeys. The screen shifts laterally, escorts moving like chess pieces precisely where mathematics demands. The U-boat commander, Kapitän-Leutnant Karl-Heinz Wendt of U-653, blinks at his attack periscope. "What are they doing?" his ally mutters. "This isn't right. They're not closing. They're moving sideways." Wendt grits his teeth. The torpedo solution collapses. The angles are all wrong. "Verdammt! Fire! Now!" 2 G7E torpedoes leave the tubes. Too late. On Harvester, lookouts watch the luminescent wakes slide past, missing by yards. A near miss, but a miss. Broad slams his fist onto the chart table. "Beautiful, beautiful. Maintain spacing. Bring the corvettes around. Beta sweep." The escorts tighten their formation, weaving overlapping Aztec arcs. Janet's net is closing. On the ocean floor grid inside Derby House, Janet once demonstrated this moment with chalk and quiet precision. Now, at the surface of the real Atlantic, it unfolds with fire and steel. "Contact regained," the Aztec operator shouts. "Bearing 085, range 800. Broad doesn't hesitate. All ships, pineapple search. 6 escorts swing inward like petals, forming the deadly fruit-shaped pattern Janet designed to disrupt Wolfpack cohesion. U-653 tries to evade. Diesels roared to life moments earlier, but now the boat is diving again, too fast, too steep. The North Atlantic crushes mistakes mercilessly. Depth charge throwers load. Pattern, release. The night explodes. 10 charges plunge into the black, glowing faintly as they descend, firing tiny sparks of phosphorescence before whump, 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 whump. Columns of water leap skyward. The shockwave ripples under the Harvester, rattling her hull. Several splashes glow with oil, bubbles, and debris. "Possible kill," a signalman shouts. Broad watches the sea boil. A long plume of diesel rises. He slowly exhales. "Miss Oakl, you bloody miracle." Far to the east, Kapitän-Leutnant Otto Kaiser aboard U-221 listens as frantic signals pour through the ether. U-653 nicht zurückgekehrt. U-600 unter schwerem Angriff. U-416 abgebrochen. U-603 beschädigt. Tauchtiefe verloren. The B-Dienst operators can barely keep up. Kaiser slams a fist into the bulkhead. The escorts, they've changed everything. Another operator hands him a slip of decoding paper. More bad news. HX-229 und SC-122 kaum Verluste. Convoys HX-229 and SC-129 with minimal losses. Kaiser mutters, "This is impossible. A week ago, we owned the night." But the numbers don't lie. The Wolfpack tactics crafted by Donitz, brilliant, predatory, lethal, are finally being countered with mathematics, discipline, and patterns named after fruit and playground taunts. And they're working. Janet hunches over a shortwave radio in the communications alcove of Derby House, waiting. She's not supposed to be here at 2 a.m., but officers no longer question her presence. The door opens. Commander Ainsworth steps in, rain dripping from his coat. He doesn't smile often. Tonight, he does. "We have confirmation," he says. HX-229 held the line. Minimal losses. 1 U-boat destroyed. Janet's breath catches. "What about SC-122? She asks. "Same. Escorts executed Raspberry and step aside exactly as you taught. The Wolfpack couldn't break through." Janet puts a hand over her mouth. Her eyes sting. Ainsworth sets a hand gently on her shoulder. "Miss Oakl, tonight, the Atlantic bent." She swallows, trying to maintain composure. "Sir, how many saved?" "Hard to say yet." He pauses. "Perhaps hundreds, perhaps more." Janet closes her eyes. For once, chalk has outweighed steel. At 03:18 a.m., a dispatch arrives from Admiral Horton. 2. Western approaches tactical unit from ADM. Horton, subject. Results, new doctrine proving highly effective. Continue training at once. Wolfpacks unable to penetrate. Convoys, holding line. This is the turning point. Janet reads the words twice, then again. Commander Ainsworth folds his arms, speaking softly. You realize what you've done, don't you? Janet hesitates. Ainsworth answers for her. You've saved lives, thousands of them. She looks down at her hands, still covered in chalk. Hands that cannot command ships, hands that cannot fire depth charges, hands that cannot raise the Navy's ensign, but hands that can draw lines, lines that stop torpedoes. Tonight, those lines held. Tonight, a chalk trick reshaped a war. May 1943, 3 months after Horton's order. Western Approaches Tactical Unit, Derby House, Liverpool. The Battle of the Atlantic enters its turning tide. The chalkboards are nearly worn flat. The linoleum battlefield, once polished smooth, now looks like a glacier of white lines, smudges, and deep grooves carved by months of simulated warfare. Dozens of escort commanders have come and gone. Some skeptical, some eager, some broken by the sea. All changed. Janet stands barefoot on the chalk-covered floor, her shoes left at the door to keep the grid clean, surveying the aftermath of the morning's drill. Her blouse is dusted white, almost to the elbows. She looks older than her 19 years, not in age, in the knowledge she carries. Behind her, the door creaks open. Commander Ainsworth enters with a small stack of signal reports. His uniform is crisp, but his face is lined with exhaustion. He sets the papers gently on the central table. You should read this, he says. Janet arches a brow. More casualty reports? No, Ainsworth replies, voice low. The opposite. He hands her the first page. Janet reads slowly, her eyes widening. U-boat attacks on convoys down by 68%. Confirmed U-boat kills up 42%. Average merchant ship losses per convoy, reduced from 8 to less than 1. She blinks, reads again, then looks up at Ainsworth. Is this accurate? Verified through multiple sources, he says. Radio decrypts, convoy logs, fleet dispatches. It's real. He hands her another sheet. Convoy ONS-5, victory. Convoy HX-237, minimal losses. Convoy SC-129, Wolfpack scattered. And then, Western Approaches, evaluating full-scale adoption of WW2 doctrine as standard. Janet's throat tightens. For weeks, she has watched ship after ship glide across this chalk battlefield. Destroyers, corvettes, merchantmen, moving through imaginary seas with the precision of dancers. She has drawn torpedo tracks until her fingers ached. She has run Wolfpack drills until dawn. She has buried her own grief in mathematics and geometry. And now, the Atlantic itself is reflecting those chalk marks back at her. It's working, she whispers. Ainsworth's voice cracks just slightly. It's more than working. The tide is turning. For a moment, Janet allows herself to breathe. Later that afternoon, the entire WW2 staff is called to attention. Footsteps echo. The door opens. Admiral Horton enters, the man who commands the ocean's most dangerous battlefield, the man whose decisions determine whether 10,000 sailors live or die each month, the man whose doctrine Janet overturned. He looks around the room, nodding at officers and wrens alike. Then he approaches Janet. Miss Oakl, he says, walk with me. The other officers glance at one another. No one has ever seen Horton request a private walk with anyone from WW2, much less a 19-year-old civilian girl with chalk on her sleeves. They move to the far end of the room, where a chalk-smeared wall displays convoy tracks stretching from Halifax to Liverpool. Horton studies them, hands clasped behind his back. You know, he begins softly. When I took command here, I believed the answer was aggression. Pursuit, hounding submarines until they fled. He turns to her. You proved me wrong. Janet swallows, unsure whether to apologize or stand straighter. Horton continues. The escort's greatest weapon was not aggression, but cohesion, discipline, patterned behavior. You saw what we did not. A pause. And you saw it because you were unencumbered by tradition. You had no naval pride to wound. Only a mathematical truth to uncover. Janet's voice trembles. Sir, I only wanted to save lives. Yes, Horton says, and you have. He gestures toward the chalk grid. Thousands of them. Janet lowers her eyes. Then Horton adds quietly. I read the casualty logs you submitted. A brother on HMS Vimy, was it not? She nods. I am sorry, he says, with the weight of a man who has sent far too many letters to grieving families. But I hope you take some comfort in knowing that your work has spared countless others from sharing his fate. Janet's eyes glisten. Thank you, sir. Horton nods. When this war ends, people may never know your name. But I will. He steps back, salutes her. The highest-ranking naval officer in Western Europe saluting a 19-year-old civilian girl. Janet's breath catches. She returns the gesture awkwardly. Chalk still clinging to her fingers. June 1943, North Atlantic. A lone U-boat commander stares through his periscope, hunched beneath a dripping overhead pipe. For days, his Wolfpack has tried to penetrate Convoy HX244. Every approach fails. Every firing solution collapses. Every gap in the screen closes before they can exploit it. Was this loss? His first officer mutters. Why can't we get through? Their screen, it shifts like they know what we're going to do. The commander shakes his head, defeated. It's like they've solved us. Above them, destroyers glide through the waves. Perfect spacing, perfect arcs, perfect timing. These are not the escorts of 1941 or 1942. They are following patterns invented on the chalk floor of a dim Liverpool basement. Patterns born from grief. Patterns honed through mathematics. Patterns that brought the Wolfpacks to their knees. Janet walks the linoleum battlefield one last time before the evening drills begin. She gently erases a torpedo track with the side of her hand, leaving a faint smear where the chalk once warned of danger. Her hands are calloused now, her knuckles permanently white-stained, her heart forever tied to the brother she could not save. But the ocean has changed, and she helped change it. Commander Ainsworth approaches quietly. Miss Oakl, he says, convoy losses this month, lowest since the war began. She nods, tears threatening but controlled. The room hums with new officers entering for training. More lives to save, more commanders to teach. Janet picks up a piece of chalk. Let's get started, she says. In the decades that follow, few official histories mention the Western Approach's tactical unit. Even fewer mention Janet Oakl by name. But the numbers do. From spring 1943 onward, U-boat sinkings rise. Convoy losses plummet. Wolfpack tactics collapse. And the Atlantic, once the deadliest battlefield in the world, becomes safer every month. Historians credit radar. They credit code breaking. They credit escort carriers, long-range liberators, and hedgehog mortars. All of those mattered. But hidden behind the official story, beneath the thunder of depth charges and the roar of naval guns, lies the quiet scrape of chalk on linoleum, drawn by a girl who refused to accept the Admiralty's mistakes, a girl who studied the geometry of death until she found a way to save lives. A girl whose stupid chalk trick helped sink U-boats 3 times faster than any weapon the Royal Navy possessed.